Hi there, welcome, welcome. It's Alix Sabatelli Rager here of Sweet Spot Power, and I'm so excited to be doing a long-awaited part two interview with David Schmidt of LifeWave. Welcome, David.
Alex, great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So, like I said, we're going to be doing a part two. So, in the very first interview that I did with him, which I will, of course, link below, I have a nice extensive bio, but I'm going to give you a little bit more about him in just a moment. But what I want to first do is just welcome you to Sweet Spot Power and what this is all about. And everything I've always been about is bringing people into their highest potentiality, their highest potential in an alignment, in a vibrant body, in a really clear quantum mind that is truly in alignment, the mind and the heart, and being able to really have this vessel to express, right? To embody spirit and express through us with our highest purpose, and to really discover what that is. And as we are in this new great awakening time, which we will be talking about here today, there just could not be a better time to find technologies and different things that are going to help us with this alignment, with the body, with the mind, and again, in the spirit of what it is that we are up to at this point in life. So, with that all said, I just want to welcome you again. And David, I just want to let you know about him a bit. He's a scientist and inventor, of course, and the CEO, founder of LifeWave, which is a wellness and technology company recognized multiple times by Inc. magazine's list of the fastest growing companies. He is a long-time inventor with over, I think it's 33 years. Is that about right, David? 33, 35 years?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, lost count.
You lost count. Yeah.
Right. But he's had this experience in creating innovative products to solve very difficult problems and is still doing this. We're going to be discussing some of this today. So, having studied management, information systems, and biology at Pace University, David pursued a variety of entrepreneurial opportunities and has a long history of developing novel technologies and a range of projects, including a bladeless turbine generator, combustion rocket engines, and new methods for producing oxygen and hydrogen, just little things. And he's also invented a patented double helix conductor, which produces fields made up of electromagnetic and non-electromagnetic energy. And I believe we will be talking a bit about some of these types of things and what's happening in our own energetic fields in some of the technologies. So David has been twice awarded honorary doctorate by the International Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe
Yeah, I
more.
think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
The
I
Hall of
know I
Fame.
got two awards from
Mhm.
them. This is a while ago.
Is that a while ago? Oh, okay.
It was a
Well,
while ago.
nonetheless, twice by the International Hall of Fame of Inventors for Advanced Technology. LifeWave's technology, which utilizes phototherapy patches to create cellular changes in the body, stems from many years of his research into drug-free methods for improving upon your quality of life that does not involve any type of diet, exercise program, drug, or supplement, while enhancing the body's innate healing abilities and capacities. So David holds around, I don't know, 130 patents now. Is that about right?
It's just over that. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. With over 70, probably more like 90 now in the field of regenerative science and technology. And this is where we're going. So, backed by science and clinical research, LifeWave has now been in operation, just hitting 20 years now, providing consumers, customers, people like you, effective methods for improving wellness, notably including activating a person's own stem cells and returning them to a more youthful state. And so, yes, that's the X39 patch, and we will dive a little bit into that today. A lot of bit of that today, as well as maybe some hints into where we're headed. So I can go on and on. Again, I've done another interview. Check the description box. Lots more in there about the patches. So I'm not going to double up on that. Today, we're taking the conversation to the other side of the spectrum. We did all the science and what was coming in that field. Now we're going to look at the more metaphysical and spiritual aspects and applications and possible implications during this great awakening time that we are in right now. So as I start to open up this conversation, I just want to start with the theme of as within, so without, right? So, this great awakening, what I've come to understand is our entire solar system is going around a central sun right now. And we're moving into a position now where we are closer and closer to that central sun. And therefore, there's an effect on the amount of light and photonic light that is hitting the planet, and of course us as parts of this planet, as beings of the planet, which is really making big impacts on our bodies, on the collective, and on our consciousness. And I'd love if you wouldn't mind just opening up and speaking a little bit to that, so that we can start to open and unpack this arena.
Well, I think what we see in the world around us is this incredible tension now between good and evil. And, why is it at this particular time in history? And so it's really necessary for people to go through a spiritual awakening and see what's happening in the world around us. It's an opportunity to change things for the better before things get potentially worse than they are now. So it's really important time for people to stand up and speak the truth of what is happening. And maybe one of the things that we could cover is what is a human being's connection with light. It's actually very interesting. We are what spiritualists have said for thousands of years actually turns out to be true. We're way more spiritual beings than we are physical beings. And that's probably difficult for many people to believe because we're certainly physical beings having a physical experience. So, what I mean by that is scientifically, we can see today with instrumentation how the body is using light for communication. But where exactly does that light come from in the first place? Well, in our DNA, you have a helical coil, and that helical coil is held together by hydrogen. There's actually, if you think of it as a ladder that's stripped down the middle, right in the middle, there are two atoms of hydrogen that counter rotate and they hold the DNA together. Well, we've done experiments in our lab, and what we find is that hydrogen is the link between our world and the next world. So in the Bible, in the very first sentence, in the beginning, God said, let there be light, right? In the beginning, there was nothing. Where did all of our matter come from? Hydrogen, it's the first element on the periodic table, but it's actually, I think, what you might refer to as protomatter, meaning that it's the bridge between this world and the next. And free energy devices are actually a representation of this, meaning that you can use hydrogen to extract energy from the vacuum. And this is, I suppose, one of the big secrets that the elitists don't want the common people to know, because it means that we wouldn't have to put gasoline in our cars and we wouldn't need to buy electricity and we could all be independent. But for us as human beings, it's important because light emerges from the DNA. It emerges from the cell nucleus. You can photograph this. And these particles of light, photons of light, are in fact as coherent as lasers. And they initiate thousands of different chemical reactions in the body. So there's this intimate connection between our spiritual body and our physical body. It's just that we don't really see it in action every day, but it's happening inside us. And this is important because it's a mechanism by which our bodies can interact with the light that's all around us.
Fascinating. Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't. I love this. So this concept of ascension, which is in a sense a part of what's happening now, more light coming onto the planet. The planet itself is ascending in frequency, and we can see this evident in even the Schumann resonance, which is the frequency that is being emitted from the planet. I don't know our role in that specifically as humans. To me, we're kind of like the receptors on the cell. If the planet were a cell, we're like the receptors, is how I kind of see it. We're part of the cell and we're part of the spirit, and we're made to channel this and anchor this light in. That's how, like, I just woke up one day with that like visual, and it felt like, oh, as within, so without, right? The microcosm and the macro. So this ascension process we're going through, from a sense of the light coming in, the photonic light coming in and stimulating the body, this occurs in the body, is what I understand. So it's shifting not only the planet, but also then the whole body into these higher frequencies. So the body needs to hold more light, which in a sense is the embodiment of a higher self, if you want to call that. But this can also cause, because of the distortions from our thought, from the toxicity and the things that degrade the body, it would create, I would imagine, that these distortions now are being brought to light, just like the distortions in the world are being brought to light for us to see and transmute, also within. Would you speak to that? Is that something that you understand it could be happening right now? Because we really see some people are going really sideways and other people are really, really waking up at the same time.
Well, you said something really interesting, actually, that triggered a thought that might be one way to help people understand this. And that is the type of equipment that we would use to measure light emission from the body is called a photomultiplier tube. And so the way that it's done today is that you'll take your hand and you'll put it into essentially a glove. The wrist is sealed so that there's absolutely no light. And then the photomultiplier tube can read the emission of light off of the hand. And that's representative of what's going on in the body. There are these devices where you go in a room that's completely dark, but that's, of course, much more expensive. But then you can see the light emission around the entire body. And the reason I bring that up is because as people age, their bodies begin to emit more light.
Mm.
Now, this is maybe at first a little counterintuitive,
Mhm.
but what's going on is that the cells in the body are collapsing and they're degrading and they are leaking light.
Interesting.
And this is now the light that's supposed to be in the cell is not there. And the communications pathways in the body are being disrupted. So what you're saying is very interesting, because if there's technology like 5G or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, and it is able to affect the integrity of the cell, then our bodies will leak light. We won't contain it the way that we're supposed to. And this is going to have an adverse effect on our health and an adverse effect on the way we age. And it's going to make us more susceptible to disease. So this is actually a physical process, even though it's something very, very spiritual.
Right. And we can't see it happening, just like I can see you on my screen, accept that, no problem. But for whatever reason, people have a difficult time even understanding our multidimensionality, and even just how our perspective changes our own reality of how we, see the world and experience the world, what's happening for us similarly inside. So if we're leaking this energy or this light, does that have to do with, then, in order to rectify or try to rectify this, does this have to do with trying to increase the integrity of the cell wall, or how would you see that being rectified to keep that leaking from happening?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question, because if we can improve the integrity of the cell and we can contain the light that is supposed to be there, then we're going to be able to maintain the integrity of cell communications, and we're going to be able to slow down aging, and we're going to be able to protect ourselves from disease. So this has some real world benefits.
Okay.
And the way that we found to do this, at least in part, was by increasing the energy that's produced in the mitochondria. So if you can get the mitochondria in the cell burning fat instead of carbohydrates, then the cell membrane will expand. You get a bigger charge of electrical energy around the membrane, and that improves the integrity of the membrane, and the cell, in part, reverses in aging. So that was one of the things that we found in the very early days of LifeWave with the energy patches, and it only kind of got better from there. But later on, one of the devices that I patented, we found that we could manipulate the light in the cell. and reverse the age of the cells by several years in only about 10 minutes. The issue with it initially was that it happened so quickly, was that it placed stress on the cell. So the challenge over a period of about 5 years was to figure out, okay, how can we take this mechanism and put it into a product that people can use that's very simple, that will help them to improve their health and also potentially reverse the aging process. And interestingly enough, all the information on how to do this was right in the Bible. It's that it was there all the time, but it's that people haven't seen it yet.
Wow. That's all right. That's intriguing. Very intriguing. Tell me more. Or shall we?
I'll tell you about how I discovered it. So it was not initially it was not initially in the Bible. I take a Bible study, and it's rather practical in the sense that reading passages from the Old or New Testament and looking at the best ways that you can lead your life to love others and be of service to one another, and have the best life possible in service of God and in service of other people. How can you really do that? So that's on the personal side. In what was going on in my life as an inventor and researcher was studying organisms that don't age. So we would be looking at in our lab, as one example, ants. And there's a species of ant called the temnothorax ant that if it is infected by a parasite, the lifespan of the ant increases by about 5 to 6 times over normal, and the ant does not age in the process. And what's interesting about this is that it all happens with light. When the parasite infects the ant, the parasite wants to survive. So it triggers the ant into overproducing cytochrome C oxidase. So cytochrome C oxidase carries copper, and it initiates a cascade of communications that upregulates mitochondrial function, and this flips the gene expression in the ant to a more youthful state. So that's part of the story. We were also studying in our lab lobsters. And I wanted to try to understand, why do lobsters not age? And there have been lobsters that have been found to be 130 years old, and they're completely young, and they're resistant to disease. So what is going on here? So I started to identify different wavelengths of light that were being emitted by lobsters. And I saw a pattern begin to form. These wavelengths of light were not random. They were in a code, if you will, a biological code. So I started to construct devices that could reproduce this effect in the hopes that it would have a similar effect on human beings, that we could reverse aging or stop aging. And so I constructed this device. It's now patented. And this was kind of the beginning of the process. And we sent some of these devices out for testing, and we in fact found that it was reversing the biological age of the cells. So we went through months of this. Now I'm in my Bible study, and one of the things that comes up is looking at the book of Genesis in the original Hebrew. And in the Old Testament, it's in Hebrew. In the New Testament, it's in Greek. And the unique things about Hebrew and Greek is that you can distill letters into numbers. So if you take the very first sentence, we'll use this as well, no, I'll tell you what, I'll use another example. It'll be simpler. I thought maybe one of the ways that God is communicating to us would be very simple and not complicated. So I thought, okay, in the Garden of Eden, there's the tree of life. And the tree of life, we could read into the story that Adam and Eve would eat from the fruit and not age and live perpetually. It was when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden that their lifespan was limited to about 1,000. And then after the flood, then the lifespan was limited to 120. So maybe the answer is as simple as looking at what is the number of the tree of life. So I got that number, and then I thought, okay, what if this is a frequency? And then what if I take that frequency and convert it into a wavelength? So there's a very well-known formula in physics for converting frequency to wavelength and then transposing it, which I did. And that frequency turned out to be that wavelength rather turned out to be 857 nanometers. That's exactly the wavelength of light that you use to turn on the mitochondria. It's exactly the wavelength of light that the ants are using so that they don't age. So here we come full circle. So it means that the Bible is in fact the inspired word of God, that there are numerical codes in the Bible. And I haven't even scratched the surface of the potential of this. But what I found is that it validates the wavelengths of light that we've seen coming off of ants and lobsters. And that if we look at it, taking a step back, it means, okay, God really did create everything, and he signed his name, and he put his name over in the light that comes off of these living organisms, and we can use that information to improve our health and probably improve the world around us.
What was that number again?
857 nanometers. So in research, you'll find 850 nanometers as a very common wavelength that's recognized as one that will upregulate mitochondrial function. It's extremely well documented.
Wow, that is fascinating. What was coming to mind, and I was starting to, like, my heart rate started racing a little bit, was that, I've heard about us returning, like we have the supposed junk DNA, and that we're returning to a 12-strand blueprint, 12-strand DNA rather than the two active. That we're kind of, our body is moving into a phase shift, sort of from the caterpillar to the butterfly. We're kind of in the cocoon right now and moving in through this phase shift as this is happening. And what I came to understand, the 144,000 was actually a frequency that had to do with this 12-strand DNA that was like a full activation of unity consciousness and full consciousness in the body. Maybe this is a little woo-woo, but I'm woo-woo, and we're going into it. We're diving in today. But any thoughts on that? Do you know anything about this DNA and getting this back together with what you're studying?
Well, there is no junk DNA.
I
That's a
agree.
fallacy.
It's just dormant,
Yeah,
right?
it's a fallacy because what researchers that referred to this as junk DNA, what they failed to take into account was the element of time. So in biology, when we're looking at the cells and we're looking at structures, it's a snapshot. So one of the disadvantages, I'd say today, of the analytics that we use to look at the human body, like blood and urine testing or any bioelectrical tests, is you're only getting a window into the body at that one point in time. And people often make assumptions. Let's use blood pressure as an example. Let's say that someone is at rest and they're calm and they get their blood pressure measured, and it's totally normal. And then all of a sudden something happens, and there's some type of excitement, and their blood pressure spikes. Well, they're not measuring their blood pressure at that moment, but it's clearly no longer in a normal range. So the same thing when we do blood and urine testing. We're only looking at a point in time, so we have to take multiple pieces of data to really see that that's where the trend is. Well, DNA is really the same thing. We know that the telomeres will change over time. The rods on the chromosomes, we know that they will shorten. And I know you know about this because the first time we met, that's
Right.
what we were talking about. And I couldn't tell you everything I knew about that at the
I
time.
know. I know.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Um, but we know that the telomeres are structurally going to change at the time. Well, as it turns out, what's referred to as junk DNA is not that at all. It's simply genetic coding that's dormant.
Mhm.
And the DNA will change its structure and its shape over time. And those genes that were dormant will now start to express, and other genes will turn off. So
Mm,
it's not junk DNA at all. It's DNA that is dormant at the point in time that it's being observed.
beautiful. I like that, as it's being observed. That's good. Well, because even that
Yeah.
has a lot to do with things. So, all right. So now my mind's going. Let's dive
Well,
in.
it does, right? Because I mean, that is, are
Awareness is
you referring
consciousness.
to the double slit experiment?
Yep. The consciousness and your awareness and observation is what makes it collapse into reality, right? Right.
Right. That's
So,
absolutely true.
and that is really, so much of what I studied and really dove into and I'm teaching these days is around these levels of consciousness, because they do change what dimension we are really living in terms of our reality because of what we're collapsing. And it's also very fascinating how what comes into our life is there for us to continue to expand, to let go of the distortion, see it in a new way, and elevate, hold more of the truth within us, and let go of more of the distortion. So we slowly move up that scale. So what I would love to do is to tie in what we know about X39 or other products from LifeWave and how that can help to facilitate or aid in this upgrading process that we're going through. It's being sort of forced with the light coming in, but how are these working synergistically together? Are we getting a frequency boost? Is this affecting our consciousness? Tell me about what you know in that arena.
So I'm going to start out at a place that's not so good, and then let's come back to a hopeful message, right?
Okay.
Because we should land on something positive, because the fact of the matter is there's always hope, and we can be very proactive in our lives so that we can protect ourselves and protect our families. Um, so we know that things like 5G and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are extremely damaging to the cells. Some of this even before 5G was around, when it was just 3G. Um, uh, Colorado University School of Medicine was doing thermal imaging and seeing how 3G was creating heating of brain tissue. So we know that our cells are being bombarded by microwaves in our environment, and it's incredibly damaging. We know that there are chemicals that are in our environment that are extraordinarily damaging. Every single human being now has microplastics in their body, has foreign chemicals in their body. The average number is about 97. That's been documented in clinical research. And we know that there is data that is coming out on the vax, and some of that data that's coming out of the CDC is not very good. It's showing all of the side effects that we know that are there. So there's this onslaught in the air with synthetic radiation, contamination, chemical contamination in the water, in the air, in the food, genetically modified food. So with this onslaught, what can we do to protect ourselves? And I suppose if there's any good news about this, is that ultimately these attacks are going to manifest themselves as oxidative or inflammatory stress. And the body already has mechanisms for dealing with this. So we have antioxidants like SOD and glutathione, which are going to be part of the body's